Hello, this is Antonym, and this is an analysis of an Autochess mobile game played on the July 24th patch. In this analysis, I'll be primarily going over the choices for what I'm buying, selling, and how I'm managing my money, so look out for future videos which will go into more detail on where to put your items, how to position your pieces, and how to adjust your strategy based on what the other players in the lobby are doing. My first roll gives me 2 pairs and a God of War, so I have quite a few good options. In terms of the best unit on its own in the early game, God of War is the best pick here. Then there is the question of whether to lock for round 2 when I'll have 2 more gold to spend. Since I know that hunters are quite strong this patch thanks to the addition of another hunter and shining archer, I choose to start going toward hunters by locking and picking up the pair of Autochess rangers in round 2. My roll for round 3 presents me with another God of War as well as a pair of Water Spirits and a Skull Hunter. Since I have 3 gold, I'm looking to buy a 1 cost unit and a 2 cost unit, and because it's so important to make pairs when you can, the choice between a second God of War and the Taboo Witcher is an easy one. For the 2 cost unit I buy this round, I decide on the Skull Hunter because it's building toward hunters with the Edgersis Rangers I already have. I decide not to lock to buy the pair of Water Spirits in round 4 when I have 4 gold, because I'm looking to leverage the power of God of War early to win a couple of rounds and earn some extra gold. I want to maximize my chances for getting a level 2 or good 3 cost unit to make my composition as strong as possible for the first round when I face a player. This turn is to pay off as my round 4 roll gives me the Edgersis Ranger I need to make it a level 2. With 3 gold left after taking that, I pick up the Stone Spirit because it's always good to spend your gold on picking up extra units you might not need when it doesn't reduce your income and you have the space on the bench. I take Swordman because the Cave Clan buff will make your composition quite strong going into the first fight against another player, and because it fits nicely into the Hunter and Warrior composition later with the God of War that I already have a pair of. Phantom Queen is worth considering, but she tends not to be very strong when in combination with hunters thanks to her assassin class, which either makes her jump to the back line where she doesn't hit as many enemy pieces with her ability, or forces her to position farther forward and makes the hunters very vulnerable to assassin compositions that can very easily get onto the back line. Round 5 I get a third God of War, which gives me my second level 2. I then switch up my composition to put in the God of War, and get rid of the Cave Clan racial buff so that God of War can attack at a reasonable speed. I put in the Lightblade Knight because it's slightly stronger than my other options, and I buy up the Druids to spend the gold, and potentially so that if I can find another Unicorn, I can combine them into the level 2, and then sell the Unicorn for a net profit of 1 gold. Now I see my third Hunter and Windranger, so I buy that. Then we notice that I'm 1 experience buy away from leveling up, so I sell off the Lightblade Knight and bring my peace cap up to 5. I use the last gold I have left over to buy the Taboo Witcher because it works well standalone, better than either of the goblins. I put in the Stone Spirit over the Taboo Witcher because it has a bit more health and the hunters are going to be doing most of the damage here, so I just want the front line to last as long as possible. My round 7 roll gives me 2 pairs that work toward the composition I'm already building towards, so I pick those up. I switch out the Stone Spirit with the second Wind Ranger because it benefits from the Hunter buff, and being a 3 cost piece, because the Wind Ranger simply has better stats than the Stone Spirit. I continue to buy up pieces with my spare gold, since the total value of gold that I could get by selling them all would only be 6 or 7 if I win the round, which is not enough to earn extra income. In round 8, I get lucky once again and finish my level 2 Wind Ranger. I also see a pair of Red Axe Chiefs, so I buy them both because they can potentially fit into the Hunter Warriors that I am basically committed to at this point, and because this early in the game, any 1 cost level 2 is probably going to find its way into my composition by virtue of its power relative to other options. Round 9, I once again find myself 1 experience buy away from leveling up. This time, however, it would mean giving up a golden income for this round. Because I have a win streak, and because to find hunters and warriors I want to be getting to higher levels where the chances of 3 and 4 cost units are higher, I decide on leveling up. Since I'm focusing on maintaining my win streak, I buy the Thunder Spirit to make my composition as strong as possible. In hindsight, I should also note that it would have been better to buy and use the Flaming Wizard over the Defector simply because it has better stats, but within the game it ended up not mattering, as I still pulled out the victory for this round. Going into round 10, the Rock Golems, we roll another Wind Ranger and a Siren as well as a pair of Water Spirits. Both of these are pieces that we're interested in for hunters, and because we have enough units that really fit well with our composition, I decided to skip the pair of Water Spirits in favor of keeping the Druids, which have the potential of netting me an extra gold. For round 11, I roll a third Red Axe Chief to make a level 2, which I take. I am also able to level up the Whisper Seer because of the Druid buff, but since we aren't planning on using the Whisper Seer in our composition, and it would take us below the 10 gold threshold for an extra income, I elect not to buy it. There is also consideration to be given to the werewolf, which fits into our plan of hunters and warriors, but this would take us below 10 gold, so buying it and leaving it on the bench would not be so great. In post, it looks like the optimal play would have been to sell the Thunder Spirit, buy the werewolf, and then put in the werewolf as well to replace the Skull Hunter with the new level 2 Red Axe Chief. It ends up costing me the round and losing my win streak, but the game continues on. My roll for round 12 gives me a third Swordman and a Wind Ranger, both of which I buy. I then finally switch out the Skull Hunter for a stronger unit, now the Swordman over the Red Axe Chief, but I elect not to switch the Thunder Spirit for the Red Axe Chief because it would hit my God of War's attack speed too much. I lose this round too, but I stay in the lead in terms of health thanks to winning so many rounds earlier with my quick level 2s and the strength of God of War. Checking the scoreboard, we can see that I am the only player building hunters to any significant degree, and most of the warriors that have been taken are building towards beast warriors, which don't overlap much with my plans. This also means that I can put less priority on any werewolves and tusk champions I may see, because I am less likely to be able to level them up quickly. My roll for round 13 presents a God of War, Thunder Spirit, and Swordman, but the God of War and Swordman would be building toward a level 3, and the Thunder Spirit is unlikely to stay in the composition for too much longer. As such, I sell the Whisper Seer on my bench to get to 20 gold for the next extra income threshold, and hold off on buying anything. Once I see that I'm going to win the round and get an extra gold for it, I sell the Unicorn to get to 22 gold, and then buy the Swordman before the round ends and my next roll arrives. Round 14's roll doesn't offer anything particularly useful, but because I don't have extra units to sell and get to 30 gold for more income, I use my leftover gold to buy the Venomancer and Warpwood Sage. Remember, this is useful not only because there is an off chance that I see enough of these units to level them up and then use them in my composition in the next round or two, but also because there are a limited number of pieces in the pool for the game, so by taking these less useful units out of the pool, I increase my chances of seeing units that I do want, if only slightly. Round 15 is the wolf pack round, so I make sure to position my units in preparation of the jumps that the wolf pack makes. I end up rolling a God of War, which is slightly more useful to sit on my bench than either the Venomancer or Warpwood Seer, so I sell the Warpwood Seer to make room and also bring my gold up to 30 for the income. This leaves me with a choice of which 4-cost piece I want to have on my bench. Since I don't expect either of them to make it into my composition, I take the Dragon Knight over the Venomancer because, for any player who does want those units, it is much more important that a Dragon Knight is leveled up than a Venomancer. As such, by leaving it on my bench, I am doing some small amount to deny that threat without investing anything extra that would slow down my own game plan. In round 16, I finally find a unit to replace my Thunder Spirit without reducing the attack speed of my God of War. In this case, it is Pirate Captain, who goes well with my composition as another layer of stuns with my Siren, and giving me the Warrior buff. I sell the Dragon Knight and Thunder Spirit since that gives me above 40 gold and provides me with more income. I'll note that I can't afford to be this greedy with just saving money and only buying units which interest me without re-rolling, because I continue to win rounds and have so much health to work with. That being the case, the best way for me to extend my lead is to earn gold when I can, especially since my composition will have no problem competing in the late game, so I don't feel any pressure to get stronger and deal more damage right now to other players, thereby accelerating the game. In round 17 I see no useful units, so I just sit, staying above 50 gold threshold for the maximum possible income. Once again, I have more than enough time to check up on how the other players are doing. Here we see a couple interesting things. First, looking at the gold savings of other players, there is only one other player above 50 gold, and only 2 more players beyond that with comparable savings of 30 and 39. Combining this with a look at the levels of the other players, and especially those with sizable savings, we see that the players closest to me are the Beast Warlock player, the Goblin Glacial Warlock player, and, given that they are fully 2 levels ahead, the Goblin Glacial Knight player. For my own strategy, this means I should be wary of trying to go into Warlocks, because we'll have some stiff competition to find those pieces going later into the game. That is, if we are to have a competitive late game, it's most likely to come out of these players. For round 18, now that we're above 50 gold, it is time to start spending gold with rerolls or experience to level up. For this round, because I was 2 experience buys away from a level up, and I had almost exactly that much gold to spend while staying above 50, I did so to increase my odds of rolling higher cost units. I also see another Autochess Ranger in my roll, so I picked that up too. Coming into round 19, we should note that we're going into a neutral round next round, so it's doubly important to keep our income up because neutral rounds are often easier and therefore don't really require you to invest more in order to win them. My roll gives me an Edgersis Ranger for a second level 2, and a Skull Hunter to make a pair, and a Strange Egg which is usually good to pick up once you are past the early game and your income has started to get going. On the 20th round, Lethal Ursa were offered another Red Axe Chief to potentially build into a level 3, a Dwarf Sniper, and an Abyssal Guard. I like to take the Red Axe Chief over the God of War on personal preference, as either way, I would be 5 more of that piece away to get to level 3, and neither of these pieces are all that important to have leveled beyond level 2. The reason for not taking either the Dwarf Sniper or Abyssal Guard largely stems from the fact that neither of them are particularly cost-efficient units, and both would hurt my God of War's attack speed, as they would complete the Dwarf racial buff or the Marine racial buff, respectively. In round 21, some quick arithmetic tells us that we are 5 experience buys away from leveling up, which would take 25 gold, and we are at 74 gold. I have a Red Axe Chief on the bench, which I would not be too remiss to sell, so I decide to take the level up. However, because winning a round gives you 1 gold before the end of the round, and the calculation for income for the next round, I hold on to the Red Axe Chief. Only if I had ended up losing the round would I have had to sell him. My roll for round 22 gives me quite a few interesting options. For maximum short-term power, I could buy the pair of Thunder Spirits and then use the Strange Egg to make them a level 2, and then buy the Doom Arbiter and put in those 2 new units while taking out the Red Axe Chief and second Edgersis Ranger. Another option might be to only buy the Doom Arbiter and put it in replacing either the Red Axe Chief or the second Edgersis Ranger, because 4-cost units tend to outperform 1-cost level 2s. Despite having previously mentioned there are quite a few players competing to find Warlocks, I decided to buy both the Doom Arbiter and the Soul Reaper, since the Soul Reaper together with the Edgersis Ranger give the Edgersis buff, which is quite powerful even if I don't have the opportunity to get the Soul Reaper to level 2. I end up selling the Red Axe Chief left on my bench because I don't expect it to get into level 3 so that I have space. For rounds 23 and 24, I don't see anything that I need to buy, so I instead spend my time figuring out where to put the items that I have accumulated. Generally, it is important to have those items which give mana in some way to those units which have the most impactful abilities. For my composition, those would be the Soul Reaper, the Siren, and the Pirate Captain. The defensive items I tend to give to those units with more health, because stats like armor are more efficient when they are applied to a larger health pool. But if you find yourself losing because key units are dying to assassins or abilities like from mages, then it also can make sense to put defensive items on those units. Round 25, the Wild Wing Ripper round, I see a second Soul Reaper which I buy, and then because there is already competition for that piece, I use the Strange Egg to make a level 2 Soul Reaper, thereby removing the need to wait for a third copy of a relatively rare piece. I also pick up the Berserker, as it is a warrior with good stats that I can put in at later levels. With my leftover money, I start putting it toward experience for my next level up, but since I would have to dip below 50 gold to get that level up this round, and I'm confident that I can beat the neutral round with what units I already have out, I wait until I get my next round of income before finishing that level up. Going into round 26, I complete the level up and pick up the Storm Shaman at the last moment because I have bench space, and most of the units which I most want are 4-cost units. As such, by taking a 4-cost unit that I don't want out of the pool of 4-cost units, any 4-cost units that I do roll are more likely to be the ones that I do want. In round 27, I have extra gold above 50, so I start to use rerolls to spend that gold and look for units to upgrade what I have. Though I don't have bench space, I buy units by dragging them out and directly placing them onto the field. If I were to leave them for when the preparation phase ended, then it would first try to put units at random back on my bench, and then if there is no space left on the bench, the game will automatically sell units at random until you only have the allowed number left on your field. Obviously, this is not something you want to risk happening, so it is important that you leave yourself some time after doing some rerolls to choose which units you are going to keep and which you are going to sell, so that the game itself doesn't make any bad decisions about what to get rid of. I spent my time in round 28 on allocating items as well as continuing to re-roll while keeping my gold above 50. By this point I have essentially decided which units I'm going to be using as my final 10. Autochess Ranger, Wind Ranger, Swordman, God of War, Soul Reaper, Siren, Red Axe Chief, Doom Arbiter, Berserker, and Pirate Captain. This gives me a good spread of buffs, including the first tier of the Cave Clan buff, the first tier of the Autochess buff, the first tier of the Hunter buff, and the second tier of the Warrior buff, and the Demon buff. In round 29, I choose to buy experience to get to level 10, where I can put in that full composition even though it puts me below 50 gold. I value this extra unit partly because it finishes the second tier of the warrior buff, but also because it allows me to push through more damage as I expect to win by a larger margin, have more units alive by the end of the round, and then end the game before the other players have enough time to get lucky and roll the units they might need to catch up. From here on, I re-roll looking for the aforementioned units and give out items that I receive as players drop out. Generally, there are a few interesting choices, as, unless my bench opens up because I finish leveling up enough units and the other players survive long enough, I won't be able to find and level the 5-cost units that I might start to switch in for the endgame. Thanks for watching and for making it to the end here. If you liked and found it useful, be sure to like and share the video. If you want to see more analysis and or guide videos for Autochess Mobile or other games which I'm into, consider subscribing. I've linked a copy of the transcript for this video in the description. Again, thanks for watching, and this has been Antonym.